just so you're all aware. Good. Again, welcome. Thanks for being here. My name is Michael Esbon. I'm the Assistant Director of the graduate program, and I'm really pleased to tell you all about our graduate architecture program. I think it's an amazing place to learn about the discipline of architecture, and we support a whole range of different students. We have students who come from a background in architecture. They studied architecture in their undergrad career. We have folks who've taken a few courses in architecture, the discipline of architecture or architecture adjacent courses as well. And we have folks who have never studied any architecture courses at all. They come from a background in chemistry or history or filmmaking. And I want to just say right off the bat, we truly enjoy the students who come to us with no architecture background at all. And in 3.5 years, these students are trained to become excellent architects. So I just want to start right off the bat by saying we are very inclusive. And if you feeling any kind of trepidation at all about not having any kind of background in architecture, please know that you're very much welcome in our community. So let me just further introduce us. Now, Zach, can you confirm that you can see the next slide? Because sometimes when I flip slides,
Yeah, it looks good.
very good. This is our leadership team. We have Mohammed Garapur, who's the director of the architecture program. There I am as the assistant director of graduate architecture. I work closely with Ken Filler, who's the director of our undergraduate architecture program. And of course, you just met Zach Sims, who's our program coordinator. So we are the team that sort of administers the architecture program, both the undergraduate and the graduate level. Um, and we are joined by a whole range of faculty. These faculty are, as you start to scan these faces, you can see we're a diverse bunch. And we do come from a whole range of different backgrounds, different interests. Some of us are practitioners, like we literally work in offices or run our own firms, and at the same time we teach. Some of us are fully committed academics, like myself, where we write and do research, and we also teach and administer the program. Um, and so there are adjuncts here, there are full-time professors, just the whole gamut. And the reason that I kind of want to put this kind of picture up here front and center is so that you get a sense of the idea that we're a very large community with a whole range of interests, and each of these people on the screen here are ready to sort of work with you to kind of meet you where your interests are and to kind of help you on your own kind of journey towards becoming an architect with your own set of interests and your own kind of set of priorities as well. So let me tell you a bit about the kinds of degrees that we offer. First of all, we offer our Path, what we call our Path A degree. This is a 2-year MArch degree program. It is for folks who have a pre-professional degree in architecture, meaning they have a Bachelor's of Science in Architecture, a 4-year degree. And this 2-year degree is 60 credit hours. If you scan this graphic here, what you'll see is that any um, box that's in red is a required course. Any box that's in orange is an elective. And then any box that's in gray is called a free elective, or a university elective, which means it's an elective that you take even outside of our architecture program. And so you can see there's a range here of kind of different things that you're going to be asked to do, and things where moments in your architectural education where you can choose what you want to study and what topics you want to engage in. Okay, so that's our Path A program completed in 2 years. And then we have our Path B program, and this is a 3.5-year program, and this is the program for students who do not have a background in architecture. Again, coming from biology or fine arts or some other discipline. This is 3.5 years, and the drawing is coded the same way, so you can start to scan and see that there's a whole range of required courses. There's some elective courses that are in orange, and there's um, free elective courses as well. But as you can note here, the first 2 years of your education in the Path B program, you don't have any electives. You're taking a whole range of required courses. And this is because you're engaged in a curriculum that's helping you to build your skills really from scratch, helping you learn how to draw, helping you learn about the history of architecture and our discipline, helping you to understand the basics of how buildings are put together in terms of their structures and their systems. And then, importantly, at the core of your education, whether you're in Path B or in Path A, you can see across the top of the graphic there are a series of courses called design studios. And you see that number 6? That's indicating these are 6 credit hour courses. So a typical course is a 3 credit hour course. A design studio is double that, and that's because you spend so much of your time and your effort in these design studios. Design studios are the places where you're given a problem and you're asked to creatively solve it. Now, the problem is related to architecture, of course. I'll be real simple. Say the problem is you need to design a library for a small community, and you're given a site and you're given a whole range of other parameters. And then in Design Studio, you work with your cohort, you work alongside 12 or 13 other students who are all engaged in that same question. So you're the people you're sitting with in the design studio at your desk um, are drawing and making models and working on the computer. And everybody's sort of engaged in this question. And you're also getting feedback Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from your design instructor who sits with you and asks you questions about your work and notices things about your decision making and helps you along the process. So there's a ton of learning that's happening in the design studios. It's incredibly important. It's really at the heart of your education. So one way to think about it is that you're going to go through a whole range of increasingly difficult studios, or I should say difficult, but maybe complex studios that'll challenge you appropriately as you're kind of gaining knowledge. And then there's a whole range of other smaller courses about structures, history, how to draw, and other electives that are all kind of supporting your education in your studio, right? So again, whether you're in Path A or you're in Path B, studio is at the kind of the heart of your education. It's a really great kind of learning experience. I love studio. I love that it's this kind of this place to learn that's really different from the types of learning spaces that I experienced in a liberal arts kind of education where you might maybe if you're an English major, you might meet up with your friends at the library and you work there. But in studio, you have this sort of dedicated space. You have this desk where you work. You have this community of students that are there kind of all hours of the day. It's this incredible creative community. It's inspiring. It kind of lights your fire. You can keep an eye on what your peers are doing and what they're making and how what they're doing and thinking can help inform what you're doing and thinking. So it's a workshop, really. And it's indicative of the types of environment you'll probably engage as a practicing architect later. You know, there at one time there's this idea that the architect is this kind of solo practitioner, this kind of genius who works alone. And the way that architecture is really practiced today is it's very much about communication. It's very much about negotiating with others, with other people in your own discipline and people, other practitioners, other trades. So it's very much about this sort of communal atmosphere. And the studio is kind of gives you your first steps into that way of working and that kind of working environment. Now, some of you, as Lindsay said at the top, might engage in a dual degree. And for all the different programs that are available here at MAP, including the Master of Community Planning and Historic Preservation, Real Estate Development, there's a possibility for you to engage in a Master's of Architecture and have a dual degree in any of those 3 other disciplines. So depending on whether you're a Path A or a Path B, the length of time you'll take in your career to graduate with a dual degree um, differs, right? So, for instance, if you look at the Masters of Architecture and the Masters of Real Estate Development, which is kind of captured under the acronym RDEV, if you're in the Path A program, meaning you've had a background in architecture, typically the Path A to get a Master of Architecture is 2 years. But if you add on a Master of Real Estate Development, you do that in 2.5 years. And if you're a Path B, you graduate in 3.5 years with a Master of Architecture degree. But if you add a Master's of Real Estate Development, you graduate in 4 years. And so in your mind, maybe you're thinking like, wait a minute, how do you do that math? That doesn't quite work. Well, the idea is that remember those orange boxes indicating those different electives? If you're a dual degree student, you're going to forego those electives, and those electives are going to be taken up by required courses in your second discipline in Masters of Real Estate or Historic Preservation or Community Planning. And so these are intense semesters. There's lots of learning that's happening, but you can see the kind of efficiency here that you might engage in when you combine the two disciplines and you take care of it all in 2.5 years or 4 years. So if that's something of interest to you, you should reach out to the directors of each of the programs if you have questions about how all of that works. And we have advisors as well who'd be willing to kind of discuss with you, like if you want to take a look at like a course plan or anything like that to really get a sense of what that looks like. We're happy to share. But we really are supportive of folks who do try to do this, and we have many students who do try and succeed. So let me tell you a bit more about our community relative to our kind of organizations and everything else. We're 560 students in the building. That's inclusive of undergrads and graduate students. And to break that down a bit further, at any one time, there's about 90 graduate architecture students in the building who are at various levels in their Path A and their Path B experience. And then we also have a lot of undergraduate students in studios and in courses as well. And they are engaged in two degree programs, the Bachelor of Science and the Bachelor of Arts in Architecture. All of these students are encouraged, you included, to join our many student organizations. These organizations are an opportunity for you to feel a sense of community, for you to engage some leadership skills. Oftentimes, these groups will put on things like their own kind of mini lecture series and host panels and other super interesting activities as well. So our communities are very active, very much engaged, and a great opportunity for you. Now, in terms of other kinds of events and activities and competitions that kind of further this kind of your engagement here in our community, I do want to note that when Mohammed Garapur became the director of the program in 2022, he brought with him this sort of initiative to what he calls globalize the program. And this has been happening in a whole range of different ways through our very robust education abroad offerings, through these opportunities to work with other schools through your design studio, schools around the world, I should say, through global charrettes. We have a global board that's sort of advising our program now and offering great ideas for international engagement. And then we have a very robust lecture and visiting scholar series. Every semester, we have folks coming in, practitioners, renowned academics and historians coming in from all over the world, bringing different perspectives and ideas to our community. So if you just look at this global map here, you get the sense that we're very much engaged with a whole range of different voices and opportunities around the world. Um, a bit more about our lecture series. Just in this one semester, we had Frankie Lim, came from Singapore to talk about his perspective on healthy Asian cities. We had Ezra Khan, who's a fellow at Stanford, who is talking about the diaspora in the country of Turkey. We had Carl Elefante, who was talking about his new book on decarbonization. We had Andrea Moan, who is visiting from Rotterdam and bringing her experience in working with developing architecture for people who are on the spectrum. And we also had Anthony Waco, a Ugandan-born architect who's a fellow in Toronto, who is bringing some of his experience of working in Africa. So some of these folks, they come in and they do a lecture, and then they also stay on and they join in studios and they engage in our community in a whole range of different ways. Um, and so we're really kind of proud of the robust community of international scholars we're drawing to our school. Archival Gallery is another resource that helps bring a whole range of different ideas. It's been around for close to 20 years now, and every semester there's a kind of rotating um, exhibition there. Sometimes it's an exhibition on a practices work. Sometimes it's research. It's always super interesting. And so again, that's another kind of opportunity for students to get engaged with kind of important questions that are coming up in the discipline and hearing a whole range of perspectives around that. And our mentorship program is another way that students can engage with not only internally with our own kind of community here of students, but also with the larger design professional community here in the DC area. Our mentorship program is quite unique. We're not aware really of another program like this at another school. There are two opportunities here. One is for you to act as a mentor to a younger undergraduate student. And a second opportunity is for you to be a mentee and to work with a mentor and get paired with a mentor who's a design practitioner. And what happens once you're paired is you engage in this kind of these virtual or in-person meetings with your mentor on a weekly or bi-weekly schedule. It's really however often you want to make it. But this has been a really, really great resource for students who have questions about what it's going to be like to practice, who need advice in terms of putting together a portfolio or to answer questions about job interviews. But these mentorship opportunities are also about studio work. Sometimes the questions that are top of mind for students are questions about the design that they're engaged in their courses. And so this is another kind of facet of the type of conversation you can engage in if you decide to join into our mentorship program. It's free. And again, a great opportunity not only for you to get information, but also to have a kind of leadership role as well. So I want to tell you now a bit more about design studios and about thesis. Design studios, as I said, are kind of at the heart of the experience of every architecture student, whether you're an undergrad or a grad, and no matter what school you go to, design studio is going to be at the core of your experience. And many programs, including ours, the culminating kind of design question is called the thesis project. It's a year-long engagement with a specific design question of your choosing. And so it's really a kind of capstone to your larger graduate education. Let me tell you a bit more about these things. If you're on the Path A program, you're with us for 2 years, which means that you're going to be here for 4 semesters. And 3 of those semesters, you're going to be engaged in um, these three studios, the Comprehensive Design Studio, a topical studio, which is Architecture 601, or an urban design studio, which is Architecture 700. I should also note that if you're a Path B student and you're here for 3.5 years, you will also engage in the back end of your um, career here in these same studios. Architecture 600, Architecture 601, an urban design studio, which is actually called 407 for you guys, and then the thesis as well. But you will also engage in 4 other studios prior to these studios, which again are going to be a kind of essential skills building, increase where you're going to be engaging in design questions of increasing complexity and scale. But let's talk about these three because these three studios are sort of common to whether you're a Path A or a Path B student. Starting off with the Comprehensive Design Studio, this is an intense studio. This is a studio where you're not only just kind of sitting at your desk and working at a design problem, but there are consultants that are coming in, mechanical engineers, systems engineers, um, facade design engineers who are coming in to kind of critique your work and help you develop your studio project beyond the level of what you typically do in a design studio. And so while it very much engages your creativity and design, for the first time, you're really going to have to manage not only how to enrich your idea through a real engagement with with structure and systems, but you're going to have to learn how to engage with consultants and kind of discuss and kind of negotiate and push back against assumptions. You're going to be running energy modeling that's also going to be informing your design work. So it's a simulation of how projects are actually run in the real world, where again, their work is not done in isolation, it's done in teams. It's a collaborative effort to get a building out built out in the world. And so this is essential training for the skills that you're going to apply in the real world. Just a glimpse of some of the kinds of energy modeling that you do. And again, we don't just like drop you off and expect you to know this stuff. You get trained in how to use the software, what all of this means. And it's again, a super enriching experience. I'll also say that we're very proud of an endowed fellowship called the Key Distinguished Professor endowment. And so every year we bring a renowned practitioner, and that practitioner comes and embeds in Architecture 600. And so they become a kind of additional critic who's commenting on your work and helping you figure out what next steps might be. But they really have been remarkable folks that have come through in the last few years. And so we're super proud of that program and what it how it kind of augments Architecture 600. In the next studio, whether you're Path A or Path B that you'll engage in, is a topical studio, which means there are going to be multiple options for the type of project that you want to engage in. One possibility would be the Timber in the City studio, which looks at mass timber and thinks about the notion of building sustainably and through decarbonization efforts and building with wood. But there could be a totally different type of studio offered. For instance, this one, which was called Bridging the Gap, in which graduate students here were paired and working directly with graduate students at an architecture school in Baghdad in Iraq. And so there was this a whole range of different types of collaborations, most of them virtual, where the studios were switching sites. And then architecture students in the US were learning about culture in the Middle East and vice versa. So it was a super enriching international collaboration. And so again, you will have a choice at this moment in your career about which type of studio you might want to engage in. And frankly, it might not either be either one of these. I'm just giving you examples of how varied these topical studios can be. The next studio that you'll engage in will be either 407 or 700, which blows out the scale of the design question, asks you to think beyond the building to the scale of either the city or the campus. And so you'll be thinking about kind of larger scale development patterns. You'll be thinking about urban building typologies. You'll be thinking about performative landscapes and infrastructure. This is from a studio that I ran, where we were looking at a sort of underused area of the UMD campus and rethinking how to connect areas of our campus through agroecology innovation. Um, and connect that to the city of College Park. And then following that kind of sequence of studios, you'll start to engage in your thesis. And again, this is a year-long exploration that culminates in a project that I'm sure you'll be super proud of and something that's going to have a kind of lasting effect on you as an architect. So this is the place where after kind of taking a whole range of courses and a whole range of studios, you're ready at this moment in your career to formulate a question yourself about architecture and the world, about our culture, about materiality, about the nature of building, and to pose that question, and then to look laterally to see how that question has been asked in the discipline prior to you asking it, looking to see whether that question has been asked in some form in other disciplines. In other words, what discourses are you joining in engaging in this question? And then ultimately, once the research question has been researched and formulated and thickened, then there is the opportunity to provide a kind of architectural answer to that question. I don't want to say a solution because there's many possible iterations and ways forward, but one of many answers are brought to the table by you through this rigorous architectural design. And so again, the two courses that support um, the architecture thesis are Architecture 797 on the left here, the thesis pro seminar, a 3 credit course where you're really working on, on developing the question and doing the research that supports the question that you're going to ask. And then in the next semester, you have 2 courses that are very tightly related, Architecture 798 and 799. That's a total of 9 credit hours that are devoted to you developing the architecture that is an answer to the question you posed the semester prior. The way the thesis is structured is that you work with a committee. So you have a chair, um, and then there's 1 or 2 other faculty members who are there as part of the committee to help support you. You are also asked to reach out and find mentors, either in the professional world um, or other um, faculty and other departments on campus, depending on the nature of the question that you're asking. And we help support you in that kind of search for other voices who help you along in this process. But let me just give you a glimpse of some of the types of questions that have been asked. One student in recent years was looking really at the scale of the material, right? So yes, they designed a small building, but you can see that the building was the scale of a small pavilion that could sit in the backyard of a house. Because the nature of the question really was about how materials might come together, and a question specifically about challenging conventional types of materials and instead embracing what are called regenerative materials, or materials that are more plant-based and have a lighter ecological footprint. This was a larger scale project, an educational community space, which was developed for a site in Guatemala. This student was from Guatemala. Their family still lived there. And so the opportunity to design for the community in which she grew up in was really, an idea that was very close to her heart, and she developed this architecture. Basically, the idea of it came through her own life experience, and many students kind of as they're kind of sitting back and thinking, well, if I could do anything, what would I do? They often tend to kind of look back to, their heritage, or where they have roots, and start to ask questions about that place and how their skills, their newfound architectural skills, might support the community from which they emerged. And then in an even larger scale, some students look at questions around climate change, like this student who was working in Atlantic City, where there are already flooding issues, and those flooding issues in that city are going to be exacerbated by even the most conservative projections for sea level rise. And so this student was not only designing a key building along the coastline, but thinking about a whole range of different water management practices, including public parks that could hold water and remaking streets so they become more spongy, and a whole range of other really ingenious and interesting interventions in a large scale site. So you can see that some students are working at the scale of a backyard pavilion, some students are working at the scale of the city, and the really, you're going to work with your chair to really figure out like, what is the nature of my question and how do I best test that through design and through architecture. So that'll just give you a glimpse of like the kind of core curriculum that you'll all be moving through and some common experiences that you'll have. There are possibilities to study abroad. Lindsay may explain a few of those, but just to touch on them again briefly, we have students who go to Cuba, they go to Japan, they go to Italy, Scandinavia, and now they're even going to India over the winter. And so many of these opportunities for graduate students occur in either winter or summer. The spring trip, semester-long trip to Italy is not something that's available to graduate students, but lots of opportunities in the off seasons to engage in education abroad with people who know these places, faculty members who know these places very well. And so it can be a super enriching experience to get out in the world and hear about a city, hear about a region from an expert. So all of this costs money, as you might expect, and we have ways of helping you manage that. One of the ways is through the graduate assistantships. There are two different types. There are GA positions, and there are TA positions, teaching assistant positions. These are highly competitive positions. Not everyone who wants one of these TA GA positions gets one. That said, we are very active in trying to ensure that at least if your performance, your academic performance meets a certain standard here at our program, that you'd be given an opportunity to be a TA at some point during your career. So in other words, we do try to spread the wealth, and we're very kind of cognizant of that. Um, these are opportunities to act as leaders, to act as kind of a liaison between students and instructors if you're in a teaching position. They're really opportunities for growth. And again, they come with healthy stipend and tuition remission and other perks as well. If you're an out-of-state student, a TA/GA position reduces tuition to in-state levels, and I believe that's the same for international students as well. So as part of your application process, at some point during your application process, you are going to receive an email from me, because I sort of lead the application process, that's going to ask you, first of all, are you interested in applying? And if so, which of these following positions would you be interested in? And so I just want to make it clear that this will be asked of you during the process. Um, We also have a range of scholarships. There are three different types of scholarships that are available to graduate students. There are these special scholarships called internship scholarships on the left. There are architecture program education abroad scholarships that are specifically there to help you if you're choosing to go abroad. There's a certain pot of money. Again, we endeavor to spread the wealth and make sure that everybody who wants to go abroad does not get that trip fully funded, but at least gets some amount of money from our program to help support that initiative. And then finally, there are merit-based scholarships that are available to both graduate students and undergraduate students. And those are dependent on your GPA and other kind of performance factors. Um, and so one thing I just want to describe a little more fully is the internship scholarship. There are opportunities for up to 6 individuals. We partner with local firms who offer the scholarship. So it's not only a stipend, but it's also an opportunity to work with that firm over the summer. And so there's an application process. In fact, our graduate students right now are developing their applications for that, which are going to be due December 1st. Again, highly competitive, like most things in life, but definitely worthwhile. And it can be a really kind of a um, a great step forward into your career and an opportunity to get into a relationship with a local firm that might bear fruit later down the line as well. Okay. So about the merit scholarships, I will just say too that upon, you guys are going to, if you choose to apply to our school, you will hear from us. First of all, if you've been accepted, and upon that, at that moment, you will be told whether or not you will receive a scholarship. And then a little bit further down the line is going to be the question of the TAGA position. Okay. And again, the TAGA positions are available to about 7 students for graduate assistantships and about 35 to 40 for teaching assistant. That's dependent on the semester, honestly. But again, you will have plenty of notice and plenty of instruction about how to apply for those things. As my last slide, I just want to review the kind of sequence here and what's ahead of you. So what you ought to be doing now and what you're doing right now by joining this virtual open house session is you're researching our program, right? You're figuring out who we are. You're hearing me talk about like our values and what we uphold and what we think. You can do more of that research on our new website. I encourage you to do that, to check us out. There's lots of great graphics there, and you can really get a good sense of who we are and what we're all about from that place. And frankly, you should be looking at other schools as well and listening carefully about how they describe themselves and kind of matching up those opportunities with the opportunities that you're hearing us describe. So that in the end of the day, you feel like you're putting some good options in front of you as you to make decisions about applying. Now, applying, the deadline for that is January 16th in 2025. Whoops, 2026. Sorry, I got to update my slide. Um, you will receive notification from us by mid-March about whether or not we have accepted your application. And at that same moment, as I just mentioned a minute ago, you'll be told whether or not you will receive a merit-based scholarship. Okay. And then a little bit further down the line, a few weeks after that, you'll be asked to fill out a form um, in case you're interested in applying for a TAGA assistantship. And then that will be assessed. And then you'll also be told within about a week after that of whether or not you're going to receive a TAGA position. And so the point of all this is to say that by the time that you need to make your decision, by April 15th, you will already have had all the information you need from us to know exactly what your education is going to look like and feel like here for the next several years. So you'll know whether you've been accepted, whether or not you're going to receive a scholarship, whether or not, at least in this first year, you're going to receive a TAGA position. You're going to know exactly what courses you're going to need to take and when. So you're going to know how long your education is going to be. There really will be very few questions at all left. And so you can make a very, very informed decision at that moment about whether or not UMD feels like the right place for you. Okay? So now that I've gone through all my slides, thanks for listening to that. And now I want to hear from you all with any questions that you want to bring to the table.
Yes, I do have a question. You want to answer it? So I'm hearing a lot about GRE requirements, potentially for like all sorts of master programs. Is there a GRE requirement for this program?
There is not.
Okay,
No,
good
there
enough.
once was, but there is not now. Was that Connor?
Yes.
Cool. Connor, are you, based on what I described about Path A and Path B, would you be a Path A student or a Path B student? Do you have a background in architecture or do you not?
I'm currently a senior at UMD. I'm in Bachelor of Science program. I'm graduating this December, so.
Nice.
Yep.
So you'd be joining our Path A program.
Yeah.
Terrific. Thanks, Connor.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah. What other questions do you guys have?
We have a
I
question
had
in
a
the chat from Elena, real quick. Sorry, Ilana, real quick. You want to take a
Oh, okay.
look?
It's in the chat. Hang on a
Yep.
sec.
I can read it too if you want.
Oh, I bet I could work this out. This is
I can
from.
just ask it on Zoom. I didn't want to interrupt the end of the presentation.
Oh, sure. Yeah, go ahead, Elena.
Yeah, I just had a question about the merit-based scholarship. I was wondering, what is considered when choosing applicants for that scholarship and approximately how much of tuition is covered?
Yeah, I mean our scholarships range anywhere from $1,000 to at the highest level up to 6,000. Um, that varies every year, but some of the things that are considered are, at that moment we're looking at your portfolio, we're looking at your incoming GPA, we're looking at the quality of what you've written in terms of how you're describing yourself and your aspirations for study at our school. And so essentially in that moment, you're being evaluated along with all of the other folks who have been admitted to the program. And then again, based on the kind of merit of your application package, we are making choices about whether or not you'll receive a merit-based scholarship.
Thank you.
Yeah. Um, Amiel? Oh, you know what? Hang on, Elena, back to you. Would you be a path A or a path B? Do
I
you have
would be a path A.
Okay.
That's architecture background, right? Or no,
Yeah.
is that path?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you have a BS in architecture
Yeah, I'm currently finishing one up at Arizona State.
at Arizona State? Okay, good for you. Great. Thanks for letting me know. Okay, and then Amiel, you had your hand raised.
Yes. Hello. My name is Emil, by the way.
Amiel, got
Um,
it.
I have a background in animation, and I was wondering if submitting for like the grad portfolio, an animation portfolio, such as submitting a character, background design, storyboards, if that would be plausible. And I guess I had a second question too for the grad statement, if there's like any specific points you guys were looking for.
Yeah, well, okay, good. So you're asking a question that I bet is on a lot of people's minds, folks who are coming from a non-architecture background. And then they see, wait a minute, you're asking for a portfolio, but I've never done any kind of architecture design. What am I even supposed to show? And that's where we ask you to dig into your creativity, what you've done up to this point that you would consider to be a kind of creative endeavor. Now, it sounds to me like a background in animation. I would love to see things like characters design, storyboards, it's because essentially those are ways that you are thinking, you're demonstrating how you're a visual thinker, how you're a kind of storyteller through a graphic medium. And that's, that is really something that we would very much love to evaluate and take a look at. Now, for some of you, maybe you don't come from a background in any kind of arts. It's not animation, and you don't come from a master of fine art or a fine arts background. But maybe you've done some painting, you've done some sculpture. Maybe you are an amateur photographer or something like that, right? So you need to kind of dig into, what is it? How is it that you are a creative person? What could demonstrate that creativity? And bring it to a portfolio. I'll also say this, sometimes it's not kind of like the creation of beautiful objects or interesting animations that you want to describe. It's your creative thinking in a project in the discipline of chemistry, perhaps, right? So a portfolio can be a very kind of individualistic thing. But the point of the portfolio is for you to demonstrate really who you are and how you think. And so while the types of things that you show us, they can vary, but really at the end of the day, what we're looking for is there evidence here of a critical thinker? Is there evidence here of a creative person? Is there evidence here of someone who um, can demonstrate that they have taken on um, ideas and issues that are complex in the world, and they can tell a story about how they engaged in that, right? Now, the portfolio differs from an essay in that, it really is visual. And so you might need to develop some graphics or some other materials that help tell that story of your creativity for the portfolio. Um, but I just wanted to allay any kind of fears that a non-architecture background person might have to think that, wait a minute, how am I supposed to compete if I've never even designed a building? Believe me, you're very much in the competition, even if you've never drawn a picture of a building in your life. That
Thank you
answer
so
your
much.
question?
Yes.
Perfect. Edwin, I saw you next.
Yeah, how you doing? I got three main questions pretty much. Haven't written them down over here. So one of the questions was, how does the Masters of Architecture program integrate building codes, permit documentation, and rural construction workflow into the curriculum, or does it even?
hmm Okay, good. Yeah, let's answer these one at a time. So there's a course you'll take that everyone in the master's program will take, whether you're Path A or Path B, called Professional Practice, where you're engaging with an expert in the field specifically around questions of code implementation, around permit processes, around regulations, and then in that, you remember that integrated design studio that I talked about, the one where you're dealing with like structural engineers and other consultants. That's another place where we really ask you to dig into code and requirements so that you're getting a feel for what's it like to try to be creative within a set of rules and a kind of framework of regulation and permits. All right, that was one of three questions. What else you got?
Okay, so the other question I have down is that currently I'm working as an architectural designer, so I have real work clients. And I was wondering if the program supports students who are working with real clients, and is it possible to continue freelance work, and if there's any policies against that?
Yeah, no, there aren't any policies against that. And many of our students do continue to work because, again, school's expensive and you can't necessarily drop everything and just go to school for 2 years, 3 years, 3.5 years, right? Now, is it challenging to work and be at a full-time school that demands a lot of you? Yeah, it's hard. And some students really struggle. And some students realize, you know what? I can't do three things. I can't go to school, have a part-time job outside, and be a TAGA. It's too much. So oftentimes, and we actually encourage students who are continuing to work outside of school to not pick up a TAGA position because we've seen too many students just sort of burn out on this and just not be able to handle it. What it generally means is their work in their school, their schoolwork tends to really suffer because they just don't have enough time to do it all. But no, to answer your question, there's no policy against that. And we want to support you if you're continuing to work. But you also got to be reasonable about, what's really possible, right?
Perfect. And my last question just ended off. It's kind of two questions. So the first one I wrote was, how does UMD integrate AXP progress into the program? And are students allowed to start taking the ARA exams? And if so, is support available?
Yes. Okay, so first of all, support is available. We have what's called a licensing advisor. Her name's Brittany Williams, and she's excellent at what she does. She's a practitioner and also teaches here in the program. And she specifically works with students on APX. In fact, she just had a meeting with a bunch of students a couple nights ago where she's helping students who have the same questions that you have around internships and meeting hours and whether or not they can start the exam during their course time. Now, I don't have the specific answers to any of those questions, but I do want to say that many students have those questions, and we have resources here to help you along with those processes.
Perfect. Yeah, those are all the questions I had. I appreciate that.
Great. Claire,
Hello. I
hi.
just had two quick questions. So the first one is, What's the size of a typical studio class, and do you have time to engage with a professor one-on-one?
Yes. Um, Regardless of the size of the studios, that one-on-one engagement is super critical to every studio. And so I do want to say like that's, that experience of kind of working at your desk and having your studio professor come and sit with you for, whether it's 10, 15, or 20 minutes every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, that's like a core studio experience. So um, yes, that is one-to-one work is important to us and it's going to continue. Now, the size of the different studios, they can be anywhere from 15 uh, people in a studio, students in a studio, so 15 to 1 student teacher ratio. They can be as low as, let's say, 6, 1 to 6. I'm teaching 7 Path B students right now in my graduate studio. So while that's on the smaller end, um, you will, as a Path B student, likely engage a whole range of different studios in terms of their sizes. They tend to start a little bit smaller earlier in your career. And that's actually a good thing because as you're still kind of learning the ropes and getting a feel for the disciplines, it's actually helpful to be in a little bit of a smaller studio. For Path A students, and for Path Bs in the latter half of their education, you'll probably be in studios that are around 15 students. That's about where we land.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah,
And
no
then can
problem.
I just ask one more quick question?
Yeah, of course.
Do you need any prior knowledge about just drawing or any kind of artistic skills or things about software beforehand?
No, no, you don't. We again we've created this curriculum which helps bring folks who have really never drawn anything and bring them through all the skills building that they need to become successful architects. I'm guessing by your question you might be a Path B student. You have a background in something other than architecture.
Yeah, so mine's like a little tricky because I have a bachelor's of science in interior architecture. So
Mhm.
I do have some experience in architecture, but not exactly what a bachelor of science in architecture would have.
Yes, right. And so, as part of your application process, we would look carefully at your prior education and figure out whether there are any courses in our curriculum that you could waive based on your prior experience. So that,
Okay,
that would
yeah,
be,
that makes
yeah,
sense.
that would be part of the process, and we'll work with you very closely on that.
Okay,
But again, no, you don't have to have, there are no expectations for drawing skills or anything like that coming in.
okay, thank you.
No problem.
And because of my degree, I would apply for Path B, and then some courses may be waived based on
Yep.
whatever education.
Yes,
Okay,
that's
thank
exactly
you.
right. Yep.
That's super helpful. Thank you.
No problem. And then Sanda,
Yeah, it's pronounced Sunda actually.
Sanda.
But I just had two questions as well. Um, One question is about like site visits. I was curious if those are typically involved in like studio projects or if there are any opportunities to like get out and engage with local construction projects during studios. Um,
Oh yeah, yeah, lots of opportunities for that. In fact, I think it's rare, very rare for a studio to not visit a site. In the case of like, for instance, the studio that was working, with Iraq, um, we couldn't afford to bring students over there. But often our students are making trips to museums, to buildings under construction, to really great examples of mass timber design here in the city. We take field trips to go visit firms and go hear, talks there. And yes, we have opportunities to walk on the sites and to visit the sites the students are going to be designing and thinking about for 15 weeks in a semester, right? So, yeah, we very much believe in the importance of getting students out of the classroom into the city, onto sites, to do kind of what's called experiential learning.
Okay, that's really helpful. I was also just curious if like you could talk about maybe like the software that's used in the program as well.
Oh, sure. Yeah, a whole range of software is used. Certainly the Adobe suite, Photoshop, Illustrator especially is used quite a bit. Our students are often skilled with Revit. They use SketchUp, they use Rhino, they use plugins to Rhino like Grasshopper. Um, some students are using AutoCAD for drafting. So there's really a whole range of stuff, and frankly, not to mention AI.
Mhm.
Many students are engaging AI at this moment as well. Um, so yes, there's a whole range of different platforms that are being used, and we have opportunities for like training students as well in some of the software.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. I see there are some questions in the chat. What's the time scale of a studio project, including all of its parts, project one, A through D? That's getting a little specific because it really depends on sometimes a design project can be 2 weeks and sometimes it can be 10 weeks, right? And sometimes it spans the entire semester. So it really depends. But it's frankly good practice. It's going to be helpful to you, frankly, to engage a whole range of different projects, scales and sizes and time lengths, because that's what it's like out in the real world as well. Are there any hidden fees that come up during your matriculation? And if so, what might be these things outside of printing costs? Yeah, there are things called studio fees. So the use of this kind of workshop, this laboratory, every time you engage in the studio, there's going to be something like a $300 what's called studio fee, which covers you having a desk. It covers you using our kind of like pinup spaces and our resources in the school. And so again, that's only for if you're engaged in certain courses called studio courses. And then what kind of software covered by the architecture program that we are not required to pay for? I do believe that the Adobe suite is complimentary. I'm not up to speed on exactly how much students have to pay for other licenses, but there's often student discounts and bulk rates that apply there. Are there any career engagement opportunities such as career fairs or firm visits? Yes, for sure, especially in that professional practice course. There are guests that come to kind of speak to students, visitors from firms that kind of speak about their firms. Again, we have a lecture series. We have panels that sometimes bring in folks from local firms. And then we do have every year in February, I want to say maybe February, early March, there's our interdisciplinary career fair. And that brings at least 75 firms to our school. And so it's a day when students are bringing their portfolio and their resumes and talking to a whole range of different firms and getting matched up with, um, firms that are a good fit. And so that's been a really, really successful program. Happens every year, and it's something that we're really proud of as well. Um, there was another question here. Is a portfolio required to apply if I'm interested in the Path B program? Yes. Again, a portfolio is required. And then the question for you is, well, what would be included in that? And I can't answer that question for you. But again, what you're trying to do is demonstrate who you are as a thinker, as a creative person through that portfolio, right? So, if it's not obvious to you, then you have some thinking to do about, well, what would I include there? Like, what are the kind of creative endeavors that I've engaged in, and what can I bring to the table? But yes, a portfolio is required, even if you're on the Path B program. Okay. Now, folks, I need to run to my next meeting. I do appreciate all of these great questions. And I do want to say there is going to be one more of these virtual sessions. And if you still have questions, you didn't get everything answered, there's going to be one more of them happening.
December 3rd.
Good. Thank you for that. Like a little angel popping in, helping me out there because I was just floundering. A flop
Hi,
sweat was starting
everybody.
to come down. December 3rd, is that what you said?
That is correct.
Nice. Okay. So, again, I'd love to have you join us then to hear more about the program and ask even more questions. But thank you all very much for your time. Great to meet you. And again, if you're a Path B, please do apply. Don't be intimidated by anything I just said. We love our Path Bs, and we certainly feel proud of our ability to take folks who've not engaged in any architecture at all, bring them all the way successfully to getting a master's in architecture. Okay? Take care. Talk to you soon.